Welcome, and thank you for tuning into my channel. My husband brought home an abandoned child. I poured my heart into raising him until he earned a master's degree. The day he returned from overseas, my husband told me I was nothing more than an unpaid nanny for our son. In response, I presented something that left him utterly stunned. That night, the Chicago sky seemed ready to collapse as an early summer squall unleashed a torrential downpour. The rumble of thunder echoed as lightning flashed through the gaps in the blinds, illuminating the streaks of rain running down the grimy window panes. The entire city was shrouded in a cold, wet, white haze. I sat curled up on the frayed tweed sofa in our living room, my eyes fixed on the old wall clock. The hour hand had already passed midnight, but the second hand marched on, its dry, relentless ticking echoing the anxious tightening in my chest. Mark still wasn't home. For months now, he'd been coming home late. The excuses were endless, and each one sounded plausible enough. One night it was entertaining important clients, the next a surprise meeting at the office, and sometimes it was a car breakdown or helping a friend in a jam. My intuition, a woman's sixth sense, told me my husband was hiding something. I had a vague awareness of the young, stylish mistress he secretly texted whenever he went to the bathroom. I even knew she was pregnant, thanks to the receipts for maternity clothes he'd carelessly left in the pocket of a suit jacket. But I chose silence. It was the silence of a wife who had struggled with infertility, who carried the heavy weight of guilt for 7 long years, unable to give her husband's family the heir they so desperately wanted to carry on the family name. I kept thinking that my patience and sacrifice could protect our home from the storm, that it would make Mark realize his limits and come back to me. The sound of the iron gate downstairs slamming shut was so jarring it cut through the noise of the rain. I jolted out of my reverie, my heart pounding. Hurried, frantic footsteps echoed up the creaking wooden staircase. The living room door flew open. Mark stood there, soaked to the bone, rainwater dripping from his matted hair onto a face that was pale and bloodless. But what stunned me into silence wasn't my husband's pathetic state, but the tiny bundle of blankets he was clutching to his chest like a precious treasure. The cry of a newborn, thin and reedy, tore through the oppressive silence of our home. It was a weak but persistent wail, like a lost kitten in a storm, that burrowed deep into your soul. I shot to my feet, my limbs trembling, and stammered. "Mark, what is that? Whose baby did you bring home at this hour?" Mark couldn't meet my eyes. He fumbled to place the baby on the sofa, his clumsy, shaking hands unwrapping the sopping wet blanket. His voice was hoarse from the cold and fear. "Get a dry towel, quick. He's freezing." I found him, on the steps of Street Michaels, near the office. The words hit me like a lightning strike. Found him on a church step? In the middle of a storm like this. Who could be so heartless as to abandon a tiny, helpless soul? And how could it be so coincidental that my husband was the one who found him, right at this moment? I looked at Mark, at his shifty eyes darting around the room, and a vague but sharp pain twisted in my gut. I knew he was lying. This baby was no stranger. But as I looked down at the tiny, purple-tinged creature, shivering in the thin, wet blanket, the maternal instinct within me roared to life, overpowering all jealousy and suspicion. The baby was red and wrinkled, its eyes squeezed shut, its tiny, pale mouth instinctively rooting for a nipple. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Regardless of this child's origins, he was innocent, and he was fighting for his life. I bolted into the bedroom like a gust of wind, grabbing the largest, softest towel from the linen closet and rushing back to swaddle the baby. I pulled him into my arms, transferring my own body heat to his tiny, trembling frame. The warmth from the towel and my chest slowly quieted his cries, which subsided into soft hiccups. Mark, standing beside me, let out a sigh of relief as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He leaned against the wall, utterly exhausted. He began to explain, his words jumbled and illogical. I was coming home from work, took shelter from the rain at the church, and heard crying. The priest said the parish was too poor to care for a newborn, and asked me to take him to a shelter or an orphanage. But then I thought, we've been wanting a child for so long. Maybe we could adopt him. Sarah? He left the sentence hanging, furtively watching my reaction. I looked down at the child's face under the harsh fluorescent light. A handsome baby boy. Even as a newborn, his features were distinct. A high, straight nose, a broad, determined forehead, and to my agony, in a fit of blinding jealousy, I thought I saw familiar traits on that tiny face. Perhaps obsessed with the thought of his affair, I convinced myself that his nose, his mouth, bore a faint resemblance to Mark, an undeniable testament to his betrayal. I looked up and stared deep into my husband's eyes. My gaze must have held a universe of despair and resignation. Mark flinched and looked away. He placed his black leather briefcase, the only thing he had carefully shielded from the rain, on the table. He opened it and took out a thick stack of cash, carefully wrapped in a plastic bag, and pushed it toward me. This is $25,000. I just withdrew it this afternoon from my commission bonus. With this storm, I didn't dare leave it at the office. Take it. For formula, for diapers for the baby. Just think of it as a gift from God, answering our prayers for a child to look after in our old age. $25,000. 20 years ago, that was a small fortune, enough to make a down payment on a small house. By giving it to me now, Mark was trying to buy my silence, to purchase my complicity and forgiveness. He wanted me to accept this child, his illegitimate son, under the noble guise of an abandoned baby, to cover up his and his mistress's sin. I picked up the envelope of money. It felt heavy in my hand, but my heart felt strangely, bitterly light. I knew who Veronica, the baby's mother, was. She had a reputation for being a party girl, materialistic and ambitious. She certainly wouldn't want to be tied down by a child, afraid of ruining her figure and her freedom, so she had pushed the responsibility onto Mark. And Mark, this weak-willed man, had in turn pushed that burden onto me, his legal wife. But what other choice did I have? Throw the baby out into the stormy night, make a scene, destroy our home, and become the laughingstock of the neighborhood for my infertility, or get a divorce and make way for that other woman to step into this house? No, I couldn't bear it. I swallowed the salty tears that burned my throat, held the baby tighter, and said in a voice that was eerily calm, "All right. He's in our house now, so he's our son. You go change before you catch a cold. I'll make some warm sugar water for him for now. When the rain stops in the morning, I'll go buy formula." Mark's face lit up with relief. He nodded eagerly, as if he'd been granted a pardon, and hurried into the bathroom. I was left alone in the dimly lit living room, looking at the baby who had fallen asleep in my arms. His tiny fist was wrapped tightly around my index finger. A strange warmth spread through my body, awakening the sacred maternal love that had long been dormant within me. I whispered into his ear, "Hello, little one. I'm Sarah, your mom. From now on, you'll be my son, and I will protect you." I didn't sleep a wink that night. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, but inside my heart, the greatest storm of my life had just begun. I named him Leo, hoping his life would be bright and strong, not twisted and dark like the circumstances of his birth. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving puddles shimmering on the cracked pavement. News that there was a baby in our house spread through the working-class neighborhood like wildfire. In this tight-knit community of old brick two-flats, no secret was safe. You knew what your neighbors were having for dinner. You heard every argument, and within 15 minutes, the news would travel from one end of the block to the other. I woke at dawn, and while Leo slept peacefully in an old bassinet a cousin had given me years ago for good luck, a bassinet I never had the chance to use, I took my old 10-speed bike out of the garage. I was heading to the store to buy baby supplies and groceries. As soon as I reached the end of the block, I ran right into Mrs. Gable from next door and Brenda, the neighborhood's walking megaphone, sitting on a porch swing, cracking pistachios. Mrs. Gable lowered her paper fan, her eyes narrowing as she peered at me over her reading glasses, which had slipped down her nose. "Well, Sarah, out and about early, are we? I hear Mark found a real prize last night. My, in this day and age, you don't just find treasures lying around." Brenda, sitting beside her, added with a snide tone while chewing loudly, "I heard a baby crying all night long, clear over at my place. So you're really going to keep it? They say you never know what you're getting with a stranger's child. You could be raising a cuckoo in your nest. One day, it'll peck your eyes out, you mark my words." Every word was a needle pricking my bleeding pride. They were right. He was a cuckoo. But they didn't know this cuckoo was my husband's own flesh and blood, the result of his betrayal. I forced a smile, a crooked line on my face, gone from lack of sleep and anxiety. "Well, you know, it's fate, I guess. If God doesn't give you one of your own, you raise someone else's. It's good karma. Who knows, maybe this will bring us good fortune and we'll have our own someday." Mrs. Gable pursed her lips, unconvinced. "Oh, honey, don't be naive. I'm telling you, there are clinics for this sort of thing. Or you could try those herbal remedies I read about. Who in their right mind raises someone else's kid? You look like such a sweet, gentle woman, Sarah. When that boy gets older and starts acting out, looking for his real parents, you'll have a lifetime of heartache. I didn't want to argue. I quickly got on my bike and rode off, leaving their whispers and gossip behind me. At the store, I went straight to the baby aisle and bought everything in sight. The most expensive imported formula. Diapers, newborn clothes, baby powder, bottles, and dozens of soft cotton onesies to prevent diaper rash. Mark had given me $25,000, a staggering amount, but I wouldn't spare any expense for the boy. I wanted Leo to have the very best, as if to compensate for the cruelty of being abandoned by his own mother at birth. The cashier looked at my overflowing cart, her eyes wide with surprise. Wow, Sarah, when did you have the good news? I didn't even know. Buying all the top-shelf stuff. Must be a precious baby boy. You must be so happy after all these years. I just mumbled something noncommittal, paid, and hurried home. On the way back, the curious, judgmental stares followed me like a shadow. People whispered and pointed behind my back. Some pitied me, calling me foolish and blind. Others were cruel, saying I was being played for a fool by my own husband. But I ignored them all. The image of baby Leo, sleeping peacefully, his little mouth puckered as he breathed, drowned out all my fear and hollow pride. When I got home, Mark was already up, clumsily trying to mix a bottle of formula. The sight of this grown man, spilling hot water all over the counter, fumbling with the bottle, filled me with a mixture of anger and pity. I parked my bike, washed my hands thoroughly with soap, and took the bottle from him. Go sit down. Let me do it. The water's too hot. You'll kill all the nutrients. And he'll burn his mouth. Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and guilt. He sat down at the table, wringing his hands. You're not letting what the neighbors said get to you, are you? I went out to grab a coffee this morning, and they were all whispering. They went quiet and started smirking the moment they saw me. I shook the bottle gently to mix the formula, tested a drop on my wrist to check the temperature, and replied coolly without looking at him. People's words are a double-edged sword. We live for ourselves, not for them. You just focus on your work. I'll take care of the house and the child. Just don't ever betray my trust again. Mark hung his head, not daring to say another word. He understood I wasn't just talking about the baby, but about our entire future. I lifted Leo and placed the rubber nipple in his mouth. He latched on instantly, suckling eagerly. His dark eyes opened slightly and stared up at me, as if he recognized the mother who was now his provider. In that moment, I felt an invisible but unbreakable bond forming between me and this tiny soul. Let the world gossip. Let his origins be tainted with sin. From now on, Leo was my son. He was my reason for living. But the storm wasn't just confined to the neighborhood gossips. A much larger, more ferocious hurricane was about to descend from out of state. In the form of my mother-in-law, news of Mark adopting a foundling must have reached her faster than a tornado, undoubtedly relayed by a gossiping aunt. Just 3 days later, Mark's mother, Carol, arrived on a Greyhound bus, carrying a suitcase and an aura of heavy tension. Carol was the classic matriarch of a traditional, blue-collar family, conservative and domineering. Widowed young, she had single-handedly raised Mark to be a success, and her authority in the family was absolute. Her word was law. She considered Mark her life's greatest achievement, and of course, saw continuing the family line as a sacred, non-negotiable duty. The moment she walked in the door, before she even set down her bag, her booming voice shook the entire house. Where is he? Where is this nameless child that Mark supposedly picked up? Bring him out here, so I can see what kind of creature has thrown this family into chaos and made us a laughingstock. Mark, who was in his home office, rushed out, nervously taking his mother's arm. His face was pale. Mom, you just got here. You must be tired from the trip. Sit down, have some water. The baby's sleeping. Please, keep your voice down. Carol brusquely shook off her son's hand and marched into the middle of the living room. Her sharp eyes landed on me as I stood hesitantly in the kitchen doorway. Her gaze was like a knife, dissecting me with judgment and blame. So, it's Sarah. They say motherhood makes a woman glow. You haven't even had one, yet you look as wilted as a dying plant. This family must be cursed to have a barren daughter-in-law. The old sayings are always right. If you can't have children, fine, but to bring home some stray burden to raise? Are you trying to let this family line die out? Her words were a bitter pill, Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced them back. In 10 years as her daughter-in-law, I had never heard a single kind or encouraging word from her. I bowed my head. "Hello, Mom. Please, come in and have some iced tea." Carol snorted and plopped down onto the sofa. She launched into the same old tirade I knew by heart. "I've told you 100 times, if you can't have a child, just get a divorce, free each other. This family has had a single son for 3 generations. If the line ends with Mark, how will I ever face your ancestors? How will I face your father in the afterlife? And now you're raising a cuckoo. Who do you think you're fooling? You're not fooling this old woman." Mark quickly poured a glass of orange juice and offered it to his mother, trying to placate her. "Mom, children are a matter of fate. We're still trying. We're seeing doctors. As for this baby, I just felt so sorry for him. Abandoned and helpless. It was an act of charity. Please don't be so harsh on Sarah. She's been through a lot. Sorry for her." Carol's eyes blazed as she slammed her hand on the coffee table. "Who feels sorry for me? Who feels sorry for our family name? You raise a stranger, someone with different blood, and one day he'll grow up and turn on you. Then you'll see." Just then, Leo woke up in his room and started crying from hunger. The sound startled Carol. I rushed in to get him. The baby, fresh from a bath, smelled of baby powder. His skin was rosy, and he looked incredibly chubby and cute. I carried him out to the living room to prepare his bottle, but Carol shouted, "Give him here. Let me see the face that has you two so bewitched you've lost your senses." I hesitantly handed Leo to her, my stomach in knots. She took the baby roughly, turning him over and back like she was inspecting produce at a market. She checked his hands and feet, squeezed his little legs, and stared intently at his face, her eyes probing as if trying to see into his very soul. The silence was suffocating. Mark stood nearby, sweat beading on his forehead, nervously wringing his hands as he watched his mother's expression. I held my breath, terrified she would hurt the baby, terrified she would discover something. Suddenly, the angry scowl on Carol's face softened. She stared intently at the baby's face. In truth, all newborns look somewhat alike, with their squinted eyes and puckered mouths. But, blinded by her desperate longing for a grandson, Carol began to delude herself. She pointed to Leo's high forehead, then looked at Mark, exclaiming as if she'd discovered a new continent. "Well, I'll be damned. Look at that stubborn forehead, just like Mark as a baby, and his ears, too. They're not fully formed yet, but that's definitely our family's ears." I stood there, studying the baby's face. Honestly, I didn't see any resemblance to Mark. The child's features were more refined and sharp than my husband's rougher look. But I suppose people believe what they want to believe. Hearing his mother, Mark let out a sigh of relief and quickly played along with her delusion to cover his tracks. Carol looked up at Mark, her eyes still filled with suspicion but now also with a bizarre glimmer of hope and joy. She looked back down at the baby, her grip softening from a hold to a gentle, nurturing cradle. She tickled Leo's cheek with her rough, calloused finger. The baby stopped crying and broke into a toothless grin. "Well, look at you," Carol cooed, her voice suddenly tender. "You know, when he smiles like that, he does look a little like his father did. He's my grandson. All right, I can spot our family features a mile away. No mistaking it." Mark quickly interjected, his voice still shaky with guilt. "Mom, all newborns look alike. You probably miss having a grandchild so much you're seeing things." Carol shot her son a withering glare, but didn't scold him. She held the baby closer, inhaling the sweet, milky scent from his body as if it were the fragrance of her own true grandson. She turned to me, her tone still harsh but less biting. "All right, fine. Since you've brought him home, you can raise him. But let me be clear. Don't you dare spoil him and forget your main duty. You still need to see doctors, get treatment, and have a child of your own blood. Our blood is what matters. An adopted child is still just an adopted child." Despite her words, Carol spent the rest of the afternoon glued to Leo's side. She pulled out a few old, yellowed cloth diapers from her bag, saying they were Mark's from when he was a baby, carefully preserved, and now her grandson could use them for good luck. Standing in the kitchen preparing dinner, I watched through the doorway as Carol rocked Leo, humming an off-key lullaby. "Grandma's boy, Grandma loves you. With a face like that, you can't escape your roots. My precious little treasure." A wave of profound bitterness and resentment washed over me. She recognized the resemblance because he was her son's flesh and blood. Her grandmotherly intuition couldn't be denied. She doted on him because her instincts told her he was family. And me? I was just an outsider, an unwilling participant in my husband's clumsy charade and my mother-in-law's willful delusion. Mark came into the kitchen and saw me chopping vegetables, my hands trembling and my eyes red. He tried to place a comforting hand on my shoulder. I flinched away, as if I'd been touched by a hot poker. "Go sit with your mother. I'll have dinner ready in a minute." Mark sighed heavily and walked away. I watched him go, then glanced back into the living room where Carol was cooing happily at her found grandchild. Dinner tonight would be salty, not from the seasoning, but from the tears I was swallowing back. I told myself I had to be strong for Leo and for the dignity of a woman who had sacrificed her entire youth to preserve this thing called a family. Dinner that evening was a strange affair. Carol kept piling food onto Mark's plate, her eyes never leaving the bassinet next to the table where Leo was sleeping. She cleared her throat, set down her bowl, and announced, "This boy is part of our family now. He needs a proper name. We can't just call him the baby. I've already decided. His name will be Leo Markson." I nearly choked on my food. Leo Markson. Mark's name, as a surname. A name that was far too formal and loaded with meaning for an adopted child. I spoke up cautiously, trying to keep my voice even. "Mom, I was thinking, maybe we could name him Leo Anderson, wishing him a peaceful life." The name Markson, it carries a lot of expectation. Carol shot me a death glare and slammed her chopsticks on the table. "What do you know? Anderson? Sounds weak, like a girl's wish. A boy needs a strong name, a powerful name. I've decided. Leo Markson. That's final. No more discussion." Mark, sitting beside me, quickly nodded in agreement, avoiding my gaze. "Mom's right, Sarah. Leo is a good name. The boy looks so bright. It's a perfect fit. Just listen to your mother." I watched the two of them, one initiating, the other seconding, and my heart clenched. Mark wanted his son to have his name, perhaps because Veronica, the birth mother, had wanted it, or simply to subconsciously affirm that this was his son. I swallowed the lump in my throat and continued eating my tasteless meal. From that moment on, the name Leo Markson was set in stone, forever tied to the child's life, and to mine. In the months and years that followed, Mark changed completely. He went from being a husband who was always out late to one who came home on time not for me, but for Leo. He doted on the boy excessively, sometimes to a ridiculous degree. The moment he walked in the door from work, he would scoop Leo up, kissing him and breathing in his milky scent, oblivious to the street dust on his clothes. He spared no expense on the child, buying expensive imported toys and designer strollers, while simultaneously nagging me about a $10 increase in the utility bill. Some nights, I'd be woken by the vibration of his phone. Mark would tiptoe out to the balcony, closing the glass door behind him. I'd lie perfectly still, holding my breath, straining to listen. The night wind whistling through the cracks carried his hushed words. Faint, but clear. "Yeah, he's great. Just fell asleep. Don't worry. I'm taking good care of him. Yes, his name is Leo. He looks just like me. Okay, I have to go. My wife might wake up." Each word was a knife in my heart. My wife. So that's all I was to him. A frumpy, old wife. A smokescreen to hide his affair and his illegitimate child. I pulled the covers over my head, biting my lip to stifle my sobs, my hot tears soaking the pillow. I hated Mark. I hated Veronica. But every time I looked at Leo's innocent face sleeping beside me, that hatred would soften, replaced by a profound, aching pity. The boy had done nothing wrong. As he grew, Leo developed a stubborn streak identical to his father's. Whenever he was mischievous, breaking a toy, or getting into a fight with a neighborhood kid, I would try to discipline him, only for Mark to swoop in and defend him. "He's just a kid, Sarah. What does he know? Boys are supposed to be rowdy. It means they're smart. You're too strict. You'll give him a complex." Mark always played the part of the gentle, doting father, casting me in the role of the wicked stepmother. But children are perceptive. They know who truly cares for them, who feeds them and rocks them to sleep. Despite Mark's indulgence, whenever Leo was sick or scared, the first person he called for was always Mommy Sarah. That word was the only source of strength that kept me in that cold house, the motivation to continue acting in this painful play of a happy family. Leo grew up to be a bright, clever boy, but he was often sick. Perhaps it was because he was born prematurely, or because he didn't have his mother's milk in his first days. His immune system was weak. A change in the weather would bring on a cough, a fever, or bronchitis. Asthma attacks plagued him on cold nights, leading to countless sleepless nights for me. When Leo was 5, he fell gravely ill, an ordeal I will never forget. That night, Mark had told me he was going on a 3-day business trip to Miami. I knew the truth. He was on vacation in the Florida Keys with Veronica. I had found the plane ticket stubs and a handwritten hotel receipt he'd forgotten in his pants pocket while doing the laundry. I said nothing, quietly packing his bag. My heart as cold as ash. In the middle of the night, Leo's fever spiked. His body was burning hot, and he went into convulsions, his eyes rolling back in his head. In a panic, I tried calling Mark, but his phone went straight to voicemail. It was pouring rain outside, with thunder and lightning. I couldn't get a taxi, so I threw on a raincoat, wrapped Leo tightly in my arms, and ran out into the street to flag down a car. At the Children's Hospital, the doctor diagnosed him with acute pneumonia with febrile seizures. He had to be admitted immediately. Seeing him lying in that stark white hospital bed, hooked up to an IV, his tiny chest struggling to breathe, I felt as if my own throat was closing up. The hospital bills and medication costs piled up. Mark had taken most of our money with him. I only had a few $100s for groceries at home. I called Carol, his mother, but she complained about a bad harvest and had no money to send. Desperate, I took off the one piece of valuable jewelry I owned, a gold locket my mother had left me before she died, and sold it at a pawn shop. With the cash in hand, I ran back and forth, paying hospital fees and buying the expensive, non-generic medication the doctor prescribed. For the entire week Leo was in the hospital, I stayed by his bedside 24/7, never daring to close my eyes. I gave him sponge baths, spoon-fed him thin broth, and sang him to sleep amidst the constant noise of the hospital. Once, a young nurse came in to change his IV and saw my exhausted, dark-circled eyes. "Ma'am, you need to get some rest, or you'll get sick too. Where's your husband? Why isn't he here to help?" I managed a sad smile, my hand still clutching Leo's tiny one. "He's away on business. It's okay, I can manage." The nurse sighed. "Watching you care for him so lovingly, no one would ever guess he was adopted. I see birth mothers in here who just scroll on their phones while their babies cry themselves hoarse. You're a wonderful mother." Her unintentional words brought tears to my eyes. Adopted? No, I had long forgotten that word. Leo was my flesh and blood, nurtured with my love, my tears, and my sacrifice. The day Leo was discharged, Mark finally showed up, reeking of sunshine, salt water, and a strange perfume. Seeing our pale son, he feigned shock. "My God, what happened to my son? Sarah, how could you let him get this sick?" I looked at him, and the icy glare in my eyes silenced him. I didn't argue, I didn't blame him. I just quietly carried Leo into his room and closed the door. Leo wrapped his arms around my neck, nuzzling his head against my chest, and whispered, "Mommy, Sarah, I love you so much. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor and make sure you never have to cry again." His innocent words shattered all the walls I had built around my heart. I hugged him and sobbed, all my suppressed pain and sorrow pouring out. With just those words from my son, I could endure any humiliation, any bitterness. I started an online business and took on bookkeeping work to do at night, earning extra income to pour everything into Leo's education. I was determined that he would succeed, that he would hold his head high and not suffer the same disadvantages his mother had. Time flew by. Leo grew into a handsome, tall young man, inheriting the good looks of both his biological parents. But what made me proudest wasn't his appearance, but his intellect and his character. He was a brilliant student, always at the top of his class, and he was polite, respectful, and deeply devoted to me. The day Leo received his acceptance letter to Northwestern University with a full scholarship, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Carol heard the news back in her rural town and reportedly roasted a whole pig to celebrate, boasting to everyone, "That's my grandson. He's the spitting image of his father, brilliant, a natural genius." Mark, of course, was ecstatic, his face puffed up with pride. He threw a huge party, inviting all his friends and business partners. At the party, he got drunk and pounded his chest. "You see, it's in the genes. That boy got all his brains from his old man. What does his mother know? She just stays in the kitchen." The guests laughed and raised their glasses to Mark. I was in the kitchen preparing more food when I heard my husband's booming voice, and my heart soured. The bond of nurturing is so often overlooked. They only saw the successful father's glory, not the calloused hands and tired eyes of the mother who had raised him. Leo, sitting amidst the crowd of well-wishers, saw me carrying a platter of roasted chicken and immediately got up to help. "Mom, let me get that. You go sit down and rest. You've worked so hard today." Mark scowled. "Leave her be. That's a woman's job. Get back here and have a drink with your uncle to celebrate." Leo glanced at his father, a flicker of sadness in his eyes, but he remained polite. "You and your guests go on and have fun. I'll just help Mom for a minute." His small gesture warmed my heart. I gently pushed him. "Go on, son. Go be with your father and his guests. I'm used to it. Today is your day." After graduating from Northwestern, Leo won a full scholarship for a master's program at the London School of Economics. The night before he left, I stayed up all night packing his suitcase. I packed homemade beef jerky, dozens of instant ramen packets, bottles of his favorite hot sauce, and a hand-knitted sweater. I packed it all neatly into his suitcase. I gave him endless instructions. "It's a different country over there. Take care of your health, eat properly. Don't try to save money by just eating ramen all the time. Dress warmly when it's cold. And if you have any trouble, you call me immediately, you hear?" Leo took my wrinkled hand in his eyes brimming with tears. "Mom, when I'm gone, you have to take care of yourself. Please don't work so hard anymore. I'll study hard, finish quickly, and come back to take you traveling. I will repay you for everything, Mom. I'll never forget it." Mark stood nearby, impatiently. "All right, you two. Wrap it up or he'll miss his flight. And remember to call your dad when you get there. I gave you your Uncle Mike's number over there. If you need anything, he'll help you out." Leo hugged me tightly, the embrace of a grown man. I felt his shoulders shaking. At the airport, watching his figure disappear through the security gate, I felt like a part of my body had been torn away. The house, empty of his laughter, felt more desolate and cold than ever. I returned to my routine, selling my goods online, enduring Mark's indifference and Carol's snide remarks. But a flame of hope always burned within me, waiting for the day my successful son would return. I never imagined that the day of our reunion would also be the day Mark and Veronica would conspire to deal me a fatal blow, attempting to steal everything I had painstakingly built over more than 20 years. 5 long years passed. The brief video calls with Leo were my only lifeline. Every time I saw him, more mature and confident, I felt that all my struggles were worthwhile. Leo graduated with his master's, top of his class, and ahead of schedule. A multinational corporation offered him a lucrative position to stay, but he decided to come home. The day I heard he was coming back, I was so overjoyed my hands shook and I dropped my dinner bowl. But my happiness was short-lived, as I felt the familiar premonition of a coming storm. Mark's behavior had become strangely different. He was no longer indifferent. Instead, he was overly attentive, almost suspiciously so. He had the entire house repainted, bought new furniture, and even hired a landscaping crew to clean up the yard. One evening after dinner, Mark called me into his office. The room smelled heavily of cigar smoke. He sat behind his desk, his face tense but trying to appear calm. He pushed a blue bank book across the desk toward me. "Take this." I picked it up and opened it. The number $100,000 stared back at me. I was stunned. For a woman who scraped by with an online business, this was an astronomical sum. I looked at Mark, confused. "Where did this much money come from? And why are you giving it to me?" Mark took a long drag from his cigar, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "It's money I've saved up over the years. With Leo coming back, I want to throw a huge party to celebrate his success. As for this money, consider it a thank you. You've worked hard for this family, for Leo, for over 20 years. Keep it for your retirement, or buy yourself something nice." His words sounded considerate, but a chill ran down my spine. A thank you. Retirement. It sounded like a final settlement, the closing of a contract. My wifely intuition told me this money wasn't a gift. It was severance pay. Mark was trying to push me out of his life, and perhaps out of Leo's as well. I placed the bank book back on the desk and looked him straight in the eye. "Mark, we've been married for decades. I know you. If there's something you need to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. I can't accept this money without knowing why." Mark flinched, avoiding my gaze. He stood up and paced the room. "There's nothing to it. I just want to make things up to you. You're always overthinking things. Just take it, and go buy yourself a nice dress for the party. I'm inviting a lot of important people. I don't want you to embarrass me." With that, He shoved the bank book into my hand and ushered me out of the room. Holding it, my heart was heavy. I knew the storm was very, very close. Mark was clearing the path for a major change, and I was not part of his plan. I went to my bedroom and opened the closet, taking out a deep plum velvet dress I had made 10 years ago but never had the courage to wear. I held it up to myself in the mirror. The woman in the reflection had aged considerably. There were streaks of silver in her hair, and crow's feet etched around her eyes, but her gaze was unusually steady. I told myself, "Sarah, you've endured 20 years of this. There's no storm you can't weather." The day Leo returned was the day Mark threw the biggest celebration party imaginable. He booked the entire second floor of the city's most luxurious restaurant, lavishly decorated with fresh flowers and crystal chandeliers. Guests poured in, from our old neighbors to Mark's wealthy business associates, all dressed to the nines. I wore my velvet dress, with simple makeup, and stood beside Mark, greeting the guests. Everyone complimented me, saying how blessed I was, what a wonderful job I'd done raising our son, what a happy couple we were. Each compliment was a needle in my heart, for I knew that behind this glittering facade, the truth was cracking. Mark was in a tailored black suit, his hair slicked back, his face beaming. He moved from table to table, laughing loudly, raising toasts, and introducing his brilliant son with immense pride. Carol was there, too, brought in from her town, decked out in a gaudy floral dress and loaded with gold jewelry, presiding over the main table like a queen. Leo appeared in a sharp gray suit, looking scholarly yet poised. The moment he saw me, he rushed over and hugged me, whispering, "You look beautiful, Mom. Don't worry about anything. I'm always here for you." His embrace steadied me, but a sense of dread lingered. Mark kept checking his watch, occasionally signaling the staff to adjust the lighting or sound. He was clearly waiting for a special guest. When the party was in full swing and the guests were tipsy, Mark stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone. The music faded, replaced by an expectant silence. Mark cleared his throat, his face flushed from wine and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, thank you all for being here. Today is the happiest day of my life. My son, Leo, after years of hard work overseas, has returned home with a master's degree, bringing honor to our family. As a father, I could not be prouder." Applause erupted. Mark raised a hand for silence and continued, his voice suddenly trembling with emotion. "But today's joy doesn't end there. Today, our family has double the reason to celebrate. There is someone very important, someone who made a silent sacrifice and endured great hardship in the past, who has now returned to be reunited with us." The room filled with whispers. Is Leo bringing home a foreign wife? Did Mark have another child somewhere? My heart pounded against my ribs. I knew the moment of truth had arrived. Mark gestured dramatically toward the main entrance and announced, "Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Leo's birth mother, the woman who brought him into this world, Miss Veronica." The large double doors swung open. A woman entered, bathed in a spotlight. It was Veronica, but not the furtive, nervous Veronica of 20 years ago. This Veronica was glamorous and sophisticated in a daring, high-slit evening gown and a fur stole, a string of pearls gleaming at her throat. She moved with the grace of a movie star, a dazzling smile on her face, waving to the crowd. The room gasped. All eyes shifted from Veronica to me, filled with pity and shock. I sat frozen, the blood turning to ice in my veins. Though I had prepared myself, this brazenly public appearance still left me reeling. Mark didn't just want to bring her back. He wanted to enthrone her, right in front of me and everyone we knew. Mark hurried off the stage to escort Veronica up to the platform. They stood side by side, a handsome couple. Anyone who didn't know their story would think they were made for each other. Mark took the microphone and began to spin the tear-jerking tale he had so carefully crafted. "I know you must all be very surprised. The truth is, 20 years ago, Veronica and I were deeply in love. But circumstances were against us. Our families disapproved, and we were struggling financially. We were forced apart. When Veronica gave birth to Leo, she didn't want our son to suffer in poverty. So with a broken heart, she entrusted him to my care while she went abroad to build a new life for herself." Veronica stood beside him, dabbing at her dry eyes with a handkerchief, playing the part of the grieving mother to perfection. Mark's voice cracked. "For all these years, Veronica has watched our son grow from afar, sending her love in secret. Now, thankfully, she has become a successful, financially stable woman. She has returned to reclaim her son, to make up for all the years of lost motherly love. And as a father, I have no right to stand in the way of this sacred reunion. We want to mend what was broken, to give Leo the complete, true family he deserves. In the audience, a few sentimental women began to sniffle, completely taken in by Mark's fairy tale. Applause followed, more hesitant this time, but enough to make Mark and Veronica smile triumphantly. Mark turned to Leo, who had been standing silently, his face unreadable. "Leo, son, come up here with your parents. This is your mother, Veronica, your real mother. Go on, give her a hug." Leo walked slowly onto the stage. He looked at Mark, then at Veronica. She opened her arms, expecting a heartfelt embrace. But Leo stopped a safe distance away from them, his sharp, cold gaze fixed on Veronica, freezing the smile on her face. "Hello," Leo said, his voice devoid of the emotion of a son finding his long-lost mother. Mark quickly tried to smooth things over. "Son, why are you being so formal? Call her mom. She has suffered so much to find her way back to you." Veronica rushed forward and grabbed Leo's hand. "Leo, my darling, it's me, your mother. I'm so sorry. I've missed you so much. Please, forgive me." Leo gently pulled his hand away and took a step back. He looked down at me, sitting isolated at my table, and his expression softened with pain. He took the microphone from Mark's hand and spoke clearly. "Dad, Miss Veronica, and everyone here. The story you just told is very moving, but it seems you forgot someone. The person who stayed up all night when I was sick, who sold her own jewelry to pay my hospital bills, who taught me how to read and how to be a good person. That person is sitting right there. She is my mother, Sarah." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I fought back tears and held my head high, looking at my son. Leo continued, "You say Miss Veronica had to leave because of hardship. Then why do our old neighbors remember her as the woman who ran off with a wealthy businessman just after I was born? You say she was always watching over me. Then why, in 20 years, have I never received a single phone call, a single letter, not even a birthday card from her?" Leo's words were a bucket of ice water thrown in Mark and Veronica's faces. Mark's face turned from red to ashen. Veronica stammered, her fake smile twisting into a grimace. Mark snatched the microphone back, shouting, "That's enough. What does a child know of adult matters? Are you trying to humiliate me in front of everyone? Is this how you repay me for raising you, for educating you, by talking back to your own father?" Leo calmly replied, "I'm not talking back, Dad. I'm just speaking the truth you've tried so hard to hide. You want a reunion, you want happiness. I won't stop you. But you cannot build your new life by trampling on Mom Sarah's dignity and sacrifice." The atmosphere grew thick with tension. The whispers grew louder, as looks of suspicion were cast toward Mark and Veronica. Mark's perfect script was crumbling before his eyes. He glared at me with pure hatred, as if I were the one who had coached Leo to say these things. He was wrong. This was the voice of justice, of a conscience that an educated man like Leo could not suppress. Mark trembled with rage, his knuckles white as he gripped the microphone. He couldn't believe that his proudest achievement, the son he had molded to bring glory to the family, would dare to air their dirty laundry in public on this momentous day. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure, then turned to me with a cold, cruel look I had never seen before. He knew arguing with Leo would only make him look worse. He had to cut to the root of the problem, and that root was me. He stepped off the stage and walked directly toward my table. The sound of his dress shoes on the polished floor was sharp and menacing in the dead silence. Everyone held their breath. He stood before me, his voice, amplified by the speakers, ringing out for the entire room to hear. "Sarah, we need to be clear, right here and now. You see, Veronica is back. She is Leo's birth mother, and she is the woman I love. For 20 years, I have been grateful for your care of Leo, but the love between us as husband and wife has been gone for a long time. I think it's time we set each other free." I looked up at Mark, at the face that was once so familiar, but was now that of a stranger. I wasn't surprised. I had felt this coming ever since he gave me the bank book. But to hear him say those callous words in front of everyone, my heart still ached as if it were being torn apart. He continued, his tone shifting to one of false magnanimity. "I'm not a petty man. I will leave you the old house in the suburbs and the $100,000 in the savings account I gave you. Take it and live comfortably in your old age. Leo is a man now. He needs his real parents by his side to help guide his future. Do the decent thing and step aside. Let's not make this ugly. We can part ways amicably. You will always be a benefactor to this family." His words were like daggers to my pride. He was using money to buy my departure, using the pretense of restoring Leo's family to legitimize his own vile betrayal. He wanted to cast me aside, an obstacle to be cleared for his perfect family reunion. Veronica glided down from the stage and possessively linked her arm with Mark's, her voice sickly sweet but laced with venom. "Sarah, dear, I know this is hard for you, but you can't blame love. Mark and I have already lost 20 years. We just want to make up for lost time, for ourselves and for Leo. You're a reasonable woman. Surely you want what's best for Leo, to be happy with his real parents, right? Just take the money. It's more than generous for your services." The crowd began to murmur. Some shook their heads in disgust, while others nodded in agreement. Well, blood is thicker than water. It's only right. 100 grand is a sweet deal. What more could she want? Their words were poisoned arrows. In their eyes, my 20 years of devotion could be quantified in dollars, in a dilapidated house. I glanced at Leo, who was about to charge down from the stage to defend me, but I gave him a slight shake of my head. This was my battle, my honor. I couldn't hide behind my son forever. It was time for me to stand up and face the storm myself. Slowly, I rose to my feet, smoothing down my velvet dress. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or create the scene Mark was likely hoping for. My strange calm seemed to unnerve both of them. I walked forward until I was face to face with Mark, my gaze steady and sharp. I took the microphone from a stunned waiter. My voice came out, low but powerful. "Mark, Veronica, are you two finished? Because if you are, now it's my turn." I scanned the room, my eyes passing over the familiar faces, over Carol, who was now staring at the floor in shame, and finally landing back on Mark. I pulled the $100,000 bank book from my purse and held it up for all to see. "Mark, do you really think 20 years of a woman's youth is this cheap? Do you think the sleepless nights I spent caring for a sick child, the sweat and tears I shed to raise Leo into the man he is today, could be bought off with this?" I threw the bank book onto the table in front of him. It landed with a dull thud. "I don't want your money. And the old house you mentioned was a property my parents left to me. Don't you dare claim it as your own. I am agreeing to this divorce not for your money, and not because I'm afraid of you. I'm divorcing you because you are no longer worthy of being my husband, and this fake family is not worthy of my love." Veronica sneered, about to retort, but I turned on her, a fire in my eyes that made her recoil. "And you? Veronica, you say you can't blame love. Love isn't the crime here. Betrayal, deceit, and irresponsibility are the greatest sins of all. You abandoned your son when he was just a newborn to chase after wealth. Now that he's successful, you come back to reap the rewards. Did you really think life was that easy?" Veronica turned pale, stammering, unable to form a coherent sentence. I pressed on, my voice like steel. "Before I sign any divorce papers and walk out of this life, I have one last gift for you both. A gift so that everyone here can see the true faces of this perfect couple." I signaled to Leo. He nodded, understanding. He walked over to the tech station and plugged a USB drive I had given him into the laptop. The large projector screen behind the stage flickered to life. "What are you doing?" Mark panicked. "What is this trick? Turn it off. Turn it off now." But it was too late. The first images appeared, sharp and undeniable. It was the evidence I had secretly hired a private investigator to gather over the past month, ever since my intuition warned me of Veronica's strange return. I was not the weak woman who only knew how to endure. I had been preparing for this moment. A collective gasp went through the room. On the screen was a copy of Leo's hospital birth records. In the section for the father's information, the words "father unidentified" were clearly typed. Below, it was the signature of the birth mother, Veronica, on a form surrendering parental rights. Next, a series of legally obtained flight records. The date Veronica flew to the United States was exactly 2 weeks after Leo was born. So much for the heartbroken mother forced to leave her child. The truth was, she had planned it all, abandoning the baby as soon as she was well enough to travel to her lover. This was followed by photos of a stylishly dressed Veronica, arm in arm with a wealthy, older businessman at the airport, laughing and smiling, looking anything but heartbroken or coerced. The date stamp on the photos matched the time Mark had brought Leo home. Veronica shrieked and lunged toward the screen as if to tear it down. "Turn it off! Turn it off! You bitch! Who do you think you are? Slandering me like this?" Mark was frozen in place, sweat pouring down his face. He never imagined I possessed such damning evidence. The sob story he'd so carefully constructed had been completely demolished. But that wasn't all. The screen shifted to more recent documents. Bank default notices, letters from loan sharks and collection agencies, all addressed to Veronica. The debts amounted to millions of dollars. It turned out Veronica wasn't successful at all. The wealthy businessman had dumped her after a few years, and she had fallen into a world of gambling and bad investments, leading to financial ruin. I raised the microphone again, my voice ringing out through the chaos. "Everyone, look closely. This is the real reason she came back. It wasn't for some sacred maternal love. It was because she's on the run from her debts. She knew Leo was now a successful professional with a bright future, and she wanted to leech off of him. And Mark, my good husband, helped her deceive all of you, including his own devoted son." Carol, at her table, trembled so violently she knocked over a glass of water. She stared at Veronica in horror. She, who valued money above all, had sided with her son to cast me out because she believed Veronica was rich. Now, learning Veronica was a massive debtor, she looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Mark roared and lunged at me, trying to grab the microphone. "Shut your mouth! Shut up!" But Leo was faster. He stepped in front of me, blocking Mark. His eyes, looking at his father, were filled with pain and disappointment. "Stop it, Dad. How long are you going to make a fool of yourself? The truth is right there. Are you still going to deny it?" Seeing her plan exposed, Veronica resorted to her street-brawling nature and lunged at me, her nails out. "You old hag! You dare to ruin me? I'll kill you." I stood my ground, unflinching. But before she could touch me, 2 uniformed police officers appeared at the entrance, accompanied by the restaurant manager. "We received a report of a wanted fugitive at this location," one of the officers announced. At the sight of the police, the color drained from Veronica's face. She tried to bolt for a back exit, but was intercepted by the second officer. "Miss Veronica, you're under arrest for large-scale fraud and embezzlement. You need to come with us." The sharp click of handcuffs snapping onto her wrists echoed in the silent room. The only sounds were Veronica's pathetic sobs and Mark's heavy, ragged breathing. The fairy tale reunion had ended in the most tragic and humiliating way imaginable. As Veronica was led away, Mark stood there, a broken man. The looks of scorn and ridicule were now all directed at him. His business partners, who had just been toasting his success, began whispering and quietly slipping away without a word of goodbye. Carol was the first to react. She scrambled up from her seat, wiping sweat from her brow, and rushed onto the stage. She pushed Mark aside and turned to me with a grotesque, sycophantic smile. "Oh, that Veronica. What a terrible, deceitful woman. Thank goodness our Sarah is so clever and exposed her. Otherwise, our whole family would have been ruined. I told you, Mark, I knew from the moment I saw her she was no good. Only our Sarah is a good, kind woman. I've always loved you the most, dear." I looked at her with pure disgust. Just moments ago, she was fawning over Veronica, and now she was shamelessly switching sides. Mark, seeing this, grabbed onto it like a drowning man grasping a log. He stumbled toward me, trying to take my hand, his voice pleading. "Sarah, I was wrong. I was bewitched by her. I had no idea about the debts. You saved me from ruin. Please, let's forget all this. We can go home. We can work it out. Leo needs both of us." I recoiled from his touch. "You two are incredible actors," I said with a bitter laugh. "But the show is over. I'm not a puppet you can control anymore. You say this is for Leo? If you ever truly cared about him, you wouldn't have pulled this disgusting stunt today." Seeing my resolve, Carol began to wail. "Sarah, I'm an old woman. I get confused. Don't hold it against me. How can you just abandon this family? Abandon poor Leo." "The family was abandoned a long time ago," I said, my voice firm. "I've had enough." But Mark wasn't finished. His wounded pride turned to rage. "Don't you push your luck." I humbled myself and apologized. "And you're still acting high and mighty? You remember this. No matter what Veronica is, Leo is still my son. He has my blood. You're just the woman who raised him. You have no right to separate a father and son. I looked at him with pity. Even now, he was clinging to the notion of bloodlines to salvage his shattered ego. He had no idea that his blind pride was about to be his undoing. I took a deep breath and pulled a sealed white envelope from my purse. This was my final move, one I never wanted to make. Mark, you're so proud of your family's genes, of the son who is your spitting image. You've always believed Leo was your child with Veronica, haven't you? Mark's eyes fixed on the envelope, a terrible premonition dawning on him. What? What are you saying? What's in there? I handed the envelope to Leo. Give this to your father. You already know the truth. It's time he did, too. Leo took the envelope, his hand steady, his gaze resolute. He walked up to Mark. You were always so proud that I looked like you, Dad. But it was just what you wanted to see. You saw my forehead and thought it was your family's trait. But did you ever wonder why my blood type is B, when both you and Grandma are type O? My mom's suspicion wasn't about my looks. It was Veronica's panicked reaction when a full blood panel was mentioned for me last week. Mom secretly had our DNA tested. This is the result. Mark snatched the envelope and tore it open. He scanned the technical jargon of the DNA report, his eyes landing on the final conclusion. His eyes widened in horror. His breath caught in his throat. The words in bold font struck him like a physical blow. Probability of paternity, 0%. He staggered backward, crashing into a table. The report fluttered to the floor, a death sentence for his pride. No, it's not possible, he stammered, his voice a broken whisper. He looks just like me. My mother said so. I raised him. I watched him grow up every day. How can he not be my son? I stepped forward, my voice as cold as ice. You saw what you wanted to see. You deluded yourself. The truth is, 20 years ago, Veronica was pregnant with that businessman's child. He agreed to take her to America only if she was completely unattached. For her dream of a rich life, she tricked you into taking his child so she could be free. You raised another man's son for 20 years. Mark. You preened and boasted about him, and cast aside your faithful wife, all while being the biggest fool of them all. Carol let out a horrific shriek and collapsed into a chair, beating her chest. Oh, God, no. The family line. It's over. We raised a snake. He's not my grandson. Oh, God, oh, God. The room was utterly silent. The truth was too shocking, too cruel for anyone to comprehend. Mark stood there, stripped of his dignity, his love, his son. Humiliation turned to pure, animalistic rage. He lunged at Leo, grabbing his collar. You knew, didn't you? You, and that woman, you conspired to trick me. I paid for your entire life, for this? Leo stood still, his eyes filled not with anger, but with pity. Let go of me, Dad. I didn't trick you. I only recently learned the truth myself. But I'm different from you. I value the 20 years you gave me. You only ever valued your pride and your bloodline. You never truly loved me for who I am. I rushed forward and pushed Mark away. Are you insane? You have no right to touch him. Look at yourself. You're pathetic and selfish. Mark fell to the floor, laughing a wild, broken laugh. I'm pathetic? I'm pathetic for raising another man's son for 20 years? Get out. All of you, get out. I don't need anyone. Amidst the wreckage of the party and the ruins of a family, Leo straightened his suit and came to my side. He took my hand, his grip firm and warm. He turned to face the sobbing Carol and the broken man on the floor. Dad, Grandma, I call you that for the last time, out of respect for the past. Thank you for the roof over my head and the food on my table for 20 years. I will never forget that, and I will find a way to repay you financially. But, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. The person who gave me a soul, who taught me how to love, was my mom, Sarah, and only her. She may not have given birth to me, but she gave me life with her boundless love. They say blood is thicker than water. But to me, the love of the person who raises you is what truly matters. Blood that is used to deceive and manipulate is worthless. A stranger who loves you with all their heart is more family than blood could ever be. Leo then turned to me and, in front of everyone, knelt down. Mom, he said, bowing his head, in this life, I have only one mother, and it is you. I'm so sorry I let you suffer for all these years. From now on, I will be the one to take care of you and protect you. I pulled him up, tears of pure joy streaming down my face. I had lost a terrible husband, but I had gained the most wonderful, devoted son. My sacrifice had been redeemed. Hand in hand, Leo and I walked out of the restaurant, leaving the chaos behind. We walked with our heads held high, a profound sense of peace settling over us. Behind us, Mark sat alone amidst the ruin, his eyes empty. Carol's cries echoed, mourning the loss of her brilliant grandson and her hollow family pride. They had lost everything: money, honor, family, and love. It was the steep price they paid for their greed, selfishness, and betrayal. A few days later, the divorce was finalized without a fight. I moved out of that large, cold house, taking only my personal belongings. I refused to take a single penny from Mark. I wanted a fresh start, clean and free. The shock sent Mark into a health crisis. A minor stroke left him partially paralyzed for a time. Carol, old and frail, was now saddled with caring for her invalid son, with no energy left to curse anyone. Their big house was silent and grim, filled only with loneliness and regret. 2 years later, with my small savings and help from Leo, I opened a little bakery called Sarah's Kitchen. It wasn't big, but it was always full of customers drawn to the delicious, comforting taste of my baking. I was living the most peaceful and happy days of my life. No longer did I have to cater to a husband's moods or endure a mother-in-law's scorn. My days were filled with the simple joys of baking, gardening, and reading. Leo turned down several lucrative job offers abroad and instead took a position as a university lecturer, opening a language center on the side. He wanted to stay close to me. Every weekend, he would come over for dinner, and we would go for walks or visit a museum. To see him so successful and respected filled my heart with warmth. Occasionally, he would still visit Mark and Carol, bringing them groceries and medicine. "They still gave me a start in life, Mom," he'd say. "I can't just abandon them." I supported his decision. His compassion and integrity were proof that I had raised him right. This New Year's Eve, my small home was filled with flowers and laughter. Leo brought his girlfriend, Emily, to meet me. She was a kind, gentle teacher, and seeing them together, helping me prepare our holiday meal, I knew that my own spring had finally arrived. That night, after a quiet dinner, the three of us sat together. Leo raised a glass of wine, his eyes shining. "Happy New Year, Mom. Thank you for giving me a real family. And I have some news. Emily and I are getting married this year. So, get ready to be a grandmother." I laughed, happy tears rolling down my cheeks. The tree of happiness, which I had planted in a lifetime of storms, was finally bearing sweet fruit. I looked out the window at the fireworks blooming against the night sky. I was grateful for the hardships and grateful for the sun that fate had brought me. My life story proved a simple but profound truth. Family is not defined by blood, but by hearts that beat together in love. The bond of birth is a powerful thing, but the bond of nurture, built with love and sacrifice, is what truly binds us together forever. And I, Sarah, a mother by choice, had proven that love is the most sacred bloodline of all. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful and would like to see more inspiring and profound stories, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next episode. We'll see you again soon.